Today I want to take just a few minutes to talk about Python programming in general. It's something that I realized I hadn't said much about. We've done a little bit of it indirectly already, just some generic Python programming as we've been doing our data science oriented stuff. But there might be a need for some people who are new to Python to go back and get some of the more basic context and concepts related to Python programming. So what I've done is I've compiled a short list here of things that might take you, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour to read through and get a good sense of. And I think in doing so, you'll expose yourself to a lot of the things that we'll be using. And even if you don't grasp every bit of it then, and I wouldn't expect you to, but as you run into it in other places, you'll have a resource where you can go back to look it up. So obviously, if you're already familiar with Python, this isn't going to be anything useful for you, so go ahead and skip on to the next video. Okay, so let's start by just talking about a few general overviews. These are just going to be basic things that give you, at a very high level, information about Python. Python for Beginners is from python.org. It's a great place to start. There's not a lot of specific details there, but it will help give you some context. There's a beginner's guide that I've listed here. And then there's Learn Python in 10 minutes, which I think is, it's not going to take you 10 minutes to go through this, but I think is a good place to start because, again, it goes into some specific examples. I'm showing it here on the left. It goes into some specific examples of things that are helpful to know about the Python language in general. Okay, so once you've read through those overviews, there are 5 other topical areas that I think are really good ways to break your approach to Python up. One thing that you'll obviously want to do is install packages. You'll usually use pip and pyp, so I've listed a resource here for that. Now when you need something more, for example, you want to install from source or you want to install from GitHub, it's on the same page. It's just that page is really dense, so this first link here links directly to the section on pyp, and then this section here just will take you to the rest at the top of that page, and that's a good place to get more advanced information on. So I've linked you to sort of the basic information here and then the more advanced information here. Okay, and so once you've installed packages, you'll need to import them. Importing them means to make them available to whatever script that you're using. A good tutorial for that is this here on tutorials point. It walks you through a few different ways that you can import, and this is, I think this is probably going to be a really helpful one for you because there's a little bit of nuance in how you import things, and people like to do it different ways, and so you'll see all these import statements, and until you have read through and been exposed to some of the different ways to do it, it may not make that much sense to you. So I'd certainly suggest reading through this so that when you see those imports at the top of scripts, they make a little bit more sense. And because the imports affect how you call things later on in the script, it will also make the rest of the script make more sense too. Data types, for example, the built-in, or should I say specifically the built-in data types that come with Python, so not the pandas data types, for example. We'll talk about those in more pandas and data science oriented videos, but just specifically for Python programming in general, there's some data types like booleans and numerics and strings and lists and sets and dictionaries that are generic and come along with Python outside of the data science capabilities. So good to know about some of those is going to help you with your control flow, for example. And that just happens to be the next topic. So if you have done some programming before, you may be familiar with the idea of control flow, how you get your script to do things that you want it to do, how you add conditionals like ifs, else ifs, and elses to your scripts. A good place to go for that is the Python documentation. And just a little side note, the Python documentation is generally very good, but it's a little dense for a beginner. If you've had experience with R, you'll know that there's a fairly steep learning curve for learning how to interpret the documentation. Python has the same thing. It's not as bad as R, but there is a little bit of getting used to the documentation and how it's written. Okay, so now that you know how to control the way that your scripts flow and you can do these loops and if else's and etc., you may want to write some functions. And in fact, for certain things, like feature manipulation, which we'll talk about in the next video, creating functions is probably more of a requirement for doing data science in Python than it is for some other languages. Now, it's something that you'll generally end up doing anyway, but it's a very critical part of feature manipulation, feature recoding in Python. So I've added a link here for that. All right, let's keep it short. Let's stop there and move on to the next thing. But just a reminder, I've put down here at the bottom a link to where I've stored this list on my website. Feel free to go there and bookmark it, and you'll have it whenever you want to go back and reference some of these in the future. All right, have a great day or night or morning, whatever it is your part of the world, and I'll talk to you next time.